18 minutes after 7 o'clock. So we know, of course, there are these parallel processes looking into the South African Police Service, particularly, of course, these allegations of criminal infiltration of our law enforcement. But one of the observations I think many of us have made in both hearing testimony at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry and now, of course, this parliamentary ad hoc committee is just the organizational mess that seems to be the case at the South African Police Services. I think there was at a point where the KZN Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi boldly stated he had blocked General Sibiya. He said, I blocked him. Sibiya, of course, when he was testifying before the ad hoc committee, was talking about how it became difficult to liaise with what was going on in KZN because there was no contact between himself and the commissioner of police in KZN. You can see the kind of mess that we are talking about. And we've brought in somebody who knows all about how this ought to play out. Lizette Lancaster is the acting head of Justice and Violence Prevention Program at the Institute for Security Studies. Always a pleasure to have you on the show, Lizette. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Bongani and Bongani. Good morning to your listeners. It's always nice to talk to you.
So, I mean, I'm sure you've kept an eye on all of these proceedings, and I, in fact, have a couple of clips that I want to play you in case you may have missed those particular moments. But just give me an overall impression, and let's set aside the allegations of criminal infiltration by cartels for a moment. Just in terms of an organization like the police service, which has very rigid structures. There's a reason somebody might be, a general or a colonel or a captain and all those ranks. It should be clear who receives orders from whom and who must follow them accordingly. That doesn't necessarily appear to be the case from what I can make out here.
No, I think what we are seeing is not necessarily a problem with the organizational structure, because it's very clear in the Police Service Act, it's very clear in the Constitution, but it is a matter of trust and distrust and a matter of different people and personality clashes.
But I mean, part of the rigidity of that structure is to make sure that when those personal feelings come into play, they aren't what rules the roost.
Exactly, Bongani. But what we have seen through the years, so probably since the years of Jackie Selebe at least, is that these structures and these command and control systems have broken down. There's interference, there's a lot of suspicion, people getting dirt on one another, and it becomes very difficult. It's a very toxic environment to operate in. So it becomes very difficult to fulfill your mandate in such environment. I mean, just to explain, I mean, we have seen almost not a single police commissioner finishing their term because of allegations of corruption. So this is, and of course the political interference that we've been hearing about. So we are seeing a very toxic environment where it's very difficult to exercise one's mandate.
I mean, of course, that will have a direct impact on how things pan out. Just for clarity, because I know she cares about these things, I think Ria Piecha left not because of corruption allegations, but I think you might say incompetence, perhaps. That was what was thrown at her. But I want you to listen to this moment. This is now in the ad hoc committee when General Sibiya was asked about his relationship with Vusumuzi Cat Matlala. And the idea that somebody would be walking in and out of his office, who, of course, it later turned out has this checkered record, and that didn't seem to concern him at all. Have a listen.
I would find that very, very troubling. General, as a head of intelligence, you certainly cannot allow a situation where a character whose background is not known to you to actually frequent and walk in and out of your offices at head office level. And then suddenly that character is arrested. Then you come and say, hey, I did not know that this man was a criminal. Why? Head of intelligence.
Head of intelligence, it doesn't mean that, like, for instance, I have the intelligence and the intelligence they are reporting to me what they're doing. The intelligence are falling under me, but they were not, like the counterintelligence are not reporting to me. They're reporting to General Kumalo. Now, I won't know. But above all, even the police themselves at the headquarters, they were not really aware even how he got to be allowed on the premises there and also be the one to service the student, run the hospital of the student. During the police events at the college there, he will also have his gazebo there. So he was known. It's not like in my case, I'm to be singled out as the only person who was communicated. Most of the generals there knew him, like any other person who is known not to be a criminal. I didn't know that he's a criminal person.
What do you make of an answer like that, Lizette?
Look, it's always difficult to comment on individual testimony because we haven't heard all the facts yet and seen all the evidence. But what we do know is that there are incredible generals and top managers still in the police. And having spent some time with them, we have seen them trying really hard to stay as neutral as possible, not to be influenced by outside people, not because I have seen how people try and vie for access to the police to get procurement and so on, whether it's software companies and so forth. And it's very difficult for these people to toe the line to make sure that they stay above board. But clearly there are times where some people feel more emboldened to entertain people that might not have the best interest of the organization at heart. And yes, this happens. That's why we do see all these allegations leveled of corruption against top managers in the past decade, 2 decades.
I know you're trying to be as diplomatic as possible here, Lizette, but even those generals who are trying their best, surely they'd be dismayed at some of the things that are being stated, even on, say, the version of Sibiya that you've just heard there. That surely should concern all of us, certainly those at the top of the police force.
Of course it does. And people, this is the type of testimony, the type of evidence that does put the organization's credibility on the line, which is already so low in the minds of many South Africans. So you can imagine being a good, honest police member that has to hear this and think, how easy is it for some people to be influenced or to have access to top leadership?
So what does this then mean for public trust in the police?
I think it is really important that these processes play out and that we do hear what the true nature of these types of arrangements are and were, and that we deal with this. I mean, police reform has been on the cards for decades now. It's actually never stopped since 1994. So here we are talking about things that were mentioned in the National Development Plan of 2012, where it was described as a serial crisis of top management, where we need to look at lifestyle audits for all the top managers or the top leadership in the police, where we look at how new appointments are made. There needs to be a completely new system of senior performance management and accountability.
But also just a lack of understanding of their roles. I mean, we've seen both the National Commissioner and the Deputy National Commissioner unable or unsure what to do when a police minister interferes. The National Commissioner said, I knew he couldn't, and I tried to stop him in a very nice way. The Deputy National Commissioner says, of course he could.
Well, exactly, but we heard what happened to Mkonazi when he didn't follow orders of the police minister at the time, when he removed Richard Ndluli, and he was put on so-called gardening duty where he was staying at home on full pay for a year. And these are the things that happen and has happened for decades. So it's very difficult to navigate this muddy waters of what the Constitution and the Police Service Act says and what happens in reality. And therein lies, I think, the rot of the police service. And it is a really good thing that these things are coming to the fore. There's there's a new police act, policing plan on the table. There's a lot of stuff that is happening in order to turn this around.
Right.
So that's the good news.
If I'm fair to General Sibiya, one of the things he said was he could never wear camouflage and call press conferences. He'd be fired on the spot. And he says we're opening a can of worms here and we may not be able to close it as far as Mkhwanazi is concerned. Would you say that's a fair comment?
Again, I mean, we need to see the evidence. This is clearly, again, like a clash of personalities.
Yeah, but hold on, Lizette. Do we want top cops on TikTok?
No. And again, going back to 1994, we saw that the transition was relatively peaceful because the police members at the time and the leadership understood that their role needs to be a neutral one, maintaining law and order, free from whatever political administration is in charge. And this is the problem. We need to go back to the mandates. The Provincial Police Commissioner accounts not just to the National Police Commissioner, but also to the provincial legislature. Those processes need to be strengthened. We need to see that there's disciplinary action that is done by independent people outside of the police. There are ways to do that in the legislation. We need to just see more accountability and oversight, and we're not seeing this because all we are seeing is these personalities playing out on a national level.
All right, appreciate your
or
time.
on national platforms.
Appreciate your time. Lizette Lancaster is the acting head of the Justice and Violence Prevention Program at the Institute for Security Studies. Moteo, you know what I want to do? In the next couple of days, I'm going to find a governance expert. This is somebody from a corporate point of view who might give us some insight. If you were going to redesign the police,
the structure
and the reporting lines and how people should communicate with each other and how people should deal with victimization if they're not willing to follow illegal or unethical orders, how would you redesign the police to work in that sense? Remember Mayor Khan at some point coming into the police and trying to rescue them in the early 90s? Maybe we should have some of that again.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions.
your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.